Welcome to Montgomery College. This is Montgomery College Television. This is our Introduction to Sociology class, summer session 2. We're here today to talk about one of the chapters in our textbook, Sociology Down-to-Earth Approach, by James Henslin, and the topic is socialization. Socialization is basically the process by which we learn the ways of our culture, of our society. The key word here is learn. Because when babies are born, they don't develop a natural language. We know this from cases that we've discovered. So for example, 1938 in Ohio, the father had a daughter who was deaf. She was deaf from the age of 2. As a result, she was also mute. And his wife had died, and he learned to live with her. She was not formally trained in sign language, but she used gestures, and he accepted it. However, she became pregnant. And the thought of her having a child, because he knew no one would marry her, he knew that. And then he thought about the neighbors talking. So what did he do? He didn't know what to do. He couldn't kick her out in the street, with the baby, so he put her up in the attic. And the baby and her, Isabel, was in the attic. So when they discovered her, she was already 6.5 years old. She did not speak a language. Her mother and her communicated just using gestures, basic gestures. Due to lack of sunlight, she developed what's called rickets. So when she stood up erect, the soles of her shoes were pretty much touching each other, so she walked with that kind of a gait. When she saw a man, she became violent, et cetera, et cetera. She just did what she had to do in terms of toilet training right wherever it went. After after about 2 years of language training, intensive language training, she continued to develop, where she was able to, again, fully integrate into school and become a successful, cheerful, outgoing, bright, energetic high school student. She graduated high school, et cetera. So we know that. So we know that language is not something that humans develop naturally. We have to learn it through other social human beings, hence the term socialization. Another case. Used to be cases all throughout history of feral children being born in the forest. They find them on all fours, lapping water with their tongue, and not speaking any language. If they see a small animal, they pounce on it and just, eat it raw. So everybody thought, well, that's just a myth, folk stories like you hear. However, this time French scientists found the boy. It was brought to their attention. So the French scientists brought this, they called him the wild animal of Aveyron, into their lab, and they studied this boy who was a feral child. He was abandoned at birth. And what they found, he was impervious to cold and heat, did not speak a language, et cetera, et cetera. So we know isolated children will not speak a language. It has to be learned, it has to be taught, presumably by one's family initially. We also know from a really pathetic story of Jeannie, 13 years old when they discovered her, a very sad case, because when they discovered her father was, let's put it mildly, insane. He tied her physically to a high chair for the time she was born. Her other 2 siblings died mysteriously, and we think maybe the father had something to do with it. His wife was blind, and she was deathly afraid of him because he had a big temper. Jeannie, they discovered at 13.5 years old, she was force-fed from the time she was born, never given any toys to play with, children to interact with, nobody talked to her. They fed her, force-fed her, changed her diaper, and left her alone. She had grown a second set of teeth. She was like a wild animal. They could not control her. They tried giving her language training like they did with Isabel, but no matter how long they gave it, she couldn't get it. So we know from cases like that, that somewhere between the ages of 6.5 and 12, if we don't learn the ways of our society, how the language, how to successfully interact with other people, we will never get it. We will never get it. There's other stories about identical twins, but it takes too much time. However, even there, when you have identical twins, one fertilized egg goes into 2 embryos. Quickly, in the case of Jack and Oscar, identical twins, they were born in the early 30s, and their parents got divorced. So they thought, here's a good case, because you have identical twins, so if it's hereditary versus nurture, the social environment, this would be a good place to study. So what happened in this case, fascinating, Jack, the boy, went to Trinidad with his dad. And his dad happened to be Jewish, his mother happened to be Catholic. Well, in Trinidad, he learned to love the Jewish people and then subsequently, love Israel and go into the Israeli army, et cetera, et cetera. Oscar wound up going to living with his grandmother in Czechoslovakia, 1938, and was annexed by Nazi Germany at that time. So as a result of that annex, Oscar learned to be in the Hitler Youth movement, and obedience, loyalty, except he hated Jews. And he didn't even know he was Jewish. Finally, they got them together years later twice. The second time, they were 47 years old. By this time, Oscar knew he was Jewish and wouldn't even discuss it. It made him sick to his stomach. So they found interesting differences. Jack was a liberal. He was a hard worker. Oscar was conservative, and all he wanted to do was spend a lot of leisure time. So we thought, well, that's it. It's all social environment. It has nothing to do with the hereditary. However, they did have similarities. They both were poor at math, and they both excelled at sports. They also both liked to do something crazy. They would flush the urinal before and after they went. They always did that, even though they were separate. So hereditary does have an influence. It seems to be in mathematics and sports, and of course, your height and weight and all that. But everything else, attitude, cooperativeness, competitiveness, that type of thing, the social environment has a major role in that. So, one last thing, institutionalized children. Another story. In the 1940s in the United States, people didn't live as long as we do today. So they died. As a result of that, we had a lot of orphanages. These orphanages were good places where babies existed, and they were fed and clothed, et cetera. Except the psychologists got involved because all the children there were, on the IQ tests, were considered mentally retarded. So finally, the psychologist said, it has to be something else. All these kids cannot be mentally retarded, something else. They said, perhaps it's the lack of social stimulation, early social, intimate social interaction. The way a mother or a father might give the baby a hug, a kiss, tell a story. These kids didn't have that. The nurses came on a schedule. They would change a diaper, feed the baby, this and that. The babies didn't have any mobiles. There were no stories read to them. There were no hugs and kisses. So their intelligence was retarded. So the psychologist said, well, let's see if we could match these children up. They did what's called an experiment. They had two groups. The experimental group, the experiment, they matched up one infant baby with a mother who was herself considered somewhat slow. They were between the ages of 18 and 50. They matched 13 of these children up, 15. But they had the intelligence of a 13-year-old, but they were nonviolent. The mothers, these surrogate mothers, took to these children like they were their own. They would compete, whose child's going to walk first. They would give them hugs and kisses, tell them stories. Within 2 years, their IQ went up 30 points. The experimental group. The control group, that they didn't do anything to, their intelligence continued to recede. Recent studies in India, because they're going through the same process, has confirmed this reality. So we know two things. People have to have social interaction with other humans to learn language, but also to be able to comfortably interact with other humans in a socially acceptable manner. You need intimate, stimulating social interaction when you're a child, so that you learn that behavior. I maintain that you need it throughout life, right? Okay, so that gives you an idea, sort of frames what we're going to talk about today. What we have here is 15 students in my summer class, and what they've done is they've taken parts of socialization. We have 5 groups, 3 students in each group, and what they're going to do in a couple of minutes here is they're going to give a presentation on socialization, different aspects of it. Excuse me, I dropped my paper. Different aspects of socialization. They're going to talk about sociology of mind. They're going to look at learning personality, morality, and emotions, and other topics like that. Okay, one more thing before we turn it over to the students. The technique that we used in learning this process of socialization, we used a technique called Comedia Dell'Arte, which goes back to the Italian Renaissance. It actually goes back to the 14th century. Interestingly enough, it peaked in popularity in the 16th, 17th century when there was economic crisis going on and political crisis going on. So I resurfaced it now because it seems like we're having that kind of situation at the moment with political crisis and economic crisis, so it's appropriate. So Comedia Dell'Arte is really the comedy, the craft of comedy, the comedy of craft, but it's more than that. It was shortened from Comedia Dell'Arte to from Comedia Dell'Arte la Improviso. okay? Which means not only just the comedy of craft, but the comedy of craft by artisans. So it wasn't like a painting that one person does is hanged on the wall. It wasn't a Leonardo da Vinci type thing, or a Michelangelo. What it was these people that got together and they performed. It was the theater, type of theater. They were traveling performers. The narrative, like our narrative, socialization, was set. The statuses, the positions that they occupy, or the roles they played in the play, was established. Let's say the father, the mother, the sister, the brother, the lover, you know, the art dealer, the banker. But then within those roles, within that story frame that was set from beginning bully to end, and within the particular statuses, the roles, they were able to improvise their lines. So what we did, we broke up the chapter to different parts, which the students will talk about in a minute, and each person in the group was responsible for part of their particular topic, subtopic on socialization, and we had rehearsals, right? And what worked in rehearsals, we carried over. What didn't work, we dropped. This will be the final of all the rehearsals. This is it, right? So I'm going to turn it over to the students. As I said, there are 5 groups, 3 persons in each group, and the text we're using is Sociology Down-to-Earth Approach by James Henslin. And I'm going to turn it over to Erica. And Erica, just tell us your topic of your group, and you're on.
Hi everyone, my name is Erica. We did socialization into the self and mind. The first person that I'm going to talk about, his name is Charles Horton Cooley. He was a symbolic interactionist. He was the one who concluded that the self is part of how society makes us human. He summed up his theory in the statement that I am not what I think I am not what you think I am what I think you think I am. And he says that our sense of self develops from interactions with other people. And from this, he coined the term looking glass self, which by definition is a process of which our self develops through internalizing others' reactions to us. And an example of this would be if you were looking in the mirror and you see what other people see you as. So different people see you as different things. You may think your parents see you as like the perfect child, an angel. You might think your ex-boyfriend or ex-girlfriend may see you as a devil or someone they really don't like. Your brother or sister can see you as immature, stupid, or whatever the case may be, and from that, we develop a certain self-concept about ourselves. And from this term, looking glass self, there are 3 elements. Number 1, we imagine how we appear to those around us. Like I said, we think that other people see us as dull, witty, anything you think they might see you as. Number 2, we interpret those reactions. We come to conclusions about how they evaluate us. Do they like us or do they dislike us for being that certain way? Number 3, we develop a self-concept, which basically means we interpret those reactions and it changes how we frame our feelings and ideas about ourselves. A positive reflection can lead to a positive self-concept, and the same thing with negative, it leads to a negative self-concept. Negative feedback has the power to correct our behaviors or even destroy our futures, and positive feedback has the power to encourage more positive actions or even destroy them by perpetuating false hopes. But the development of self does not depend on accurate evaluations. Those misjudgments become part of our self-concept. And in my opinion, like in high school, it's all about fitting in, having people accept you. People judging you, they're based on what they hear and how you act around them. And those teenagers in high school, they're strongly influenced by their peers, and they will go above and beyond to change their self-image to fit in, and they form their identity based on everyone's perception of them for their appearance and their behavior. Self-concept begins in childhood, but the development is a lifelong process. The self is a never finished product because we will always continue to build, change, and modify ourselves.
All right, very good. Cooley's looking glass self. We clap a lot. It reinforces the Dell'Arte. Kiana?
All right, so as he just said, my name, I'm Kiana. And she said that Charles Horton Cooley was a symbolic interactionist. Well, a symbolic interactionist studies symbolic interactionism, which is a theory that human interaction and communication is facilitated by our words, like I'm talking to y'all, our gestures, which is what I keep doing with my hand, and the other symbols that have acquired conventional meanings, like the hat that he's wearing, the B on it stands for his baseball team, my ring symbolizes my high school, and This is a major sociological perspective that places emphasis on the micro scale of social interaction, which is particularly important in the subfields such as like urban sociology, social psychology, and it really actually came from Cooley and my person, which is George Herbert Mead, who is an American philosopher, sociologist, and psychologist. He studied at the University of Chicago, and he was actually one of the distinguished studiers to be there. And he is regarded as one of the founders of social psychology, which actually, most of us, when you think of social psychology, a lot of people will just bring up Mead because that's what he did. One of the things that he came up with is this concept of I versus me, where the I is seen as a subject. And it's basically like I'm talking to you. I am the subject, you guys are my objects. And if I say me, I am the object versus you guys are the subject. So it's like y'all are listening to me. So, and then he also said that both our self and our mind are social products. Like she said, how we develop through what we experience in our lifetime, that's how we become social products. And what he also came up with, that's all the I versus me, and then these next three stages all come before the other. The other being, well, not ourselves. Well, so the first thing that we do when we're kids is we start with imitation, and it prepares us for role taking. This is where, we're babies, we're not even 2 years old yet, and if we see our mother yelling, we might start crying. If we see someone, you know how babies will smile back at you. If you smile at them, that's them imitating you. After that comes play, which is where we pretend to take on the roles of others. This is our superhero stage. You tied that bathroom towel around your neck and you flew down the stairs. Yeah, you were being Superman. That's your play. Right after that came our team games, which is roughly the beginning.
Excuse me, I like Roy Rogers, okay, just so you know.
Superman, no, it's all about Superman and Spider-Man. Don't get it twisted.
Okay.
But,
God, I had triggered.
Don Quixote, you're being really serious. But anyways, so right after that stage comes the team game stage, which is right when we hit up into elementary school and, recess. Okay, now y'all got to tell me, you remember your soccer games and kickball. Kickball was a thing. And remember, anyone else have field day where it was your class against everybody else's class? That was your team, where you're taking on multiple roles. Like you can't just be the only person doing one thing because now you have to worry about somebody else. And that slides right into his idea of taking the role of the other, which is where you're putting yourself in one's shoes. You know the phrase, to walk a mile in someone else's shoes? Mm-hmm. That pretty much sums up what taking the role of the other is. If you can understand how to walk in someone else's shoes, you can anticipate what they're going to do or say after what you just said. And the two different kinds of others that we have is one, our significant other, which is, your boyfriend, your girlfriend, your husband, your wife, someone who's really close to you and has a big influence on your life. And past out of them, it's the generalized other, which is the norms, values, attitudes, and expectations of people in general. It's basically society as a whole is viewed as a generalized other.
The quick question I just wanted to follow up on what you said. It was very interesting, the I and the me and all that stuff about the generalized other and team sports. Getting back to the I think Mead said, that's the creative, active, spontaneous part of ourselves. In other words, although the me is very powerful, society tells us to do this, do not do this, stop at the red, go on the green, all that stuff, the rules. But there is a part of us that wants to create, wants to be spontaneous. Otherwise, what is life for? So that active, creative I, we all have that. And I think in team sports, it might come into play because I happen to know Kiana played basketball in high school, and they went 27-0 with their school, which was pretty unusual for a team to go 20. That there had to be creative plays in those games where there might have been a set play called by the coach or something, but because of the situation, you had to create something that wasn't there to sink a basket to, let's say, win the game or go up.
Well,
and that's the I. So I just wanted to give you that picture of the I. The I is the creative. The I says, I'm going to do something today different that I want to do. Okay, that's all.
You want a story with that one? So you can back up your example?
What's that?
Okay, I'll make this as quick as I possibly
Go
can.
ahead, please.
Championship game. We go in 26-0, right? And about 4 minutes left in the third quarter, we're down by 19 points. Nice. I didn't know this. My teammates didn't know this. I don't even know if my coach knew this. Nobody knew that we were down by 19 until we read it the next day in the paper. And we all night long, we hadn't pressed this team at all. And my coach called this the timeout at that 4-minute mark, and we get into the timeout, and we're sitting there looking at him because like we know we're losing. We just didn't know by how much. And he's all like, just keep your focus, play the game. Good things will happen. He didn't give us a play. He didn't tell us what to do. He just said, keep your focus, play your game. So we get out there, and there's this picture that they have up on the internet where we're all huddled in the middle, and the subject, was like, look, guys, we haven't pressed them once this whole game. They've pressed us. We have not pressed them. I told my friend Sasha, she's this fiery little point guard the best defender I've ever played with. I was like, if that little girl gets that ball past half court, we will be having problems at the end of this game. The first time we pressed them, Sasha got a steal, we got a quick basket. I told my friend, who was the best three-point shooter I've ever seen, she hadn't shot a 3 all game. She got 7 within that last 8 minutes. And the first one we told her to do was go standing up in the corner as the girl's shooting a free throw, so they're all listening to us. Like, go stand in the corner, you sit up, I'll get you the ball, you sink your 3. They put somebody in her face. They put somebody on the ball person's face. They covered everybody. She hit her 3. We took off from there. We could have won the game by 7, but when that 30-second mark hit and we were up by 7, you throw the ball around. You don't really care anymore because that game is yours.
So you won the game?
We won the game.
All right, congratulations. Creativity, okay. Christian.
Okay, so the last person that our group looked at was Jean Piaget, who is a Swiss psychologist, and he's really famous for his research in children. And he was really interested in how reasoning was learned and how children learn reasoning. So he found that there were 4 stages that he sort of set up: sensory motor, pre-operational, concrete operational, and formal operation. And the first one, sensory motor, occurs between the ages birth to about 2 years. And in this stage, they're entirely unaware of their self versus the environment. So they don't even really have any concept of self. They don't even know that they're there. They just know I'm hungry, so I cry. And as an example that the professor gave, was he found a child who was upset. And so to distract the child, he took a pencil and he held it out in front of the kid. And the kid looked at it like, fascinated by the pencil, and all of a sudden hit it. And the kid couldn't figure out what happened to the pencil. It's like a little baby, right? Had no idea what happened to the pencil because it didn't have any sense of its environment. And so as far as it knew, the pencil just disappeared. It couldn't understand what had happened because they can only understand direct contact in this stage. The second stage is pre-operational, which is between 2 and 7 years old. And children in this stage can understand concepts or cannot understand concepts or point of view, but they can use symbols. So they can speak, they can use words, they can talk like I'm talking to you right now. But if they can't necessarily understand like what exactly time is, or they struggle with the concept of space, so how far away something is. So for example, if Kiana was 3 years old, and she's sitting next to me, and there's an object in the middle of the room, and I said, Kiana, can you describe that object to me? And then she could use words, she could use her symbols to describe it. Now if I asked, Kiana, can you describe that object from Fawn's perspective? She's not going to have any idea what to do because she can't put herself in Fawn's point of view.
This is between 2 and 7 now?
Yes.
Okay.
And then concrete operational is the third stage, and this is from 7 to 12 years, and some people actually get stuck in this stage. Some people never even reach the 4th stage. And then here, people can apply concepts to concrete examples. So they understand time, they understand, oh, that's half an hour. They understand that somebody lied, that's another concept. Truth is a concept. But they can't necessarily understand what truth is. So if you were to ask a 10-year-old, like, what is beauty? They might be able to say, oh, well, this picture is beautiful. But they can't tell you what beauty really means to them. Or if you were to ask them, what is truth? They can say, oh, well, it's true that 2 + 2 is 4. But they aren't really going to be able to give you an overall description of truth. And very few people actually move past this stage. Which leads me to the last one, which is formal operational, which occurs after 12 years old. And here there's a deeper understanding of concepts, and there's abstract thought. So they can answer the same questions: what is truth? What is beauty? And they can try to give you an answer to it based on their own feelings, but it really takes a higher level of thinking to get to that overall concept.
and that's Piaget's 4 stages.
Okay. One quick follow-up. You know, I got to do it. I'm not going to do it for everybody, but just say the formal operational say, as you just happen to be looking at the book, it says, for example, at that stage, you might say that slavery is wrong. However, you would also raise another issue. If our country was founded on equality, how could anyone own slaves? In other words, how do we justify, or the people in that time justify the fact that if all men are created equal, how do we have slaves? See, that's the different level, that's that formal level. So in other words, they did it by saying that at the time that the slaves weren't full citizens, weren't full people. In fact, it was written that they were 3/5 humans. So it was a terrible way to look at people, but that's how they justify it. See? Okay, who's next? Here we are. Here you go. Group 2. This is learning personality, morality, and emotions. Key word here, learning.
Hi, my name is Sharfine, and I'm going to discuss Sigmund Freud's views on personality. Sigmund Freud developed a theory of the origin and personality that had a major impact on Western thought. He believed that personality had broken into 3 elements: the id, ego, and superego. This was done as a technique for treating emotional problems through long-term exploration of the subconscious mind. The first element is id. It relates to a newborn child. He or she will basically cry if they're hungry or if they're in pain, compared to children who are within the age range of 5 and up, who would basically do anything within in their power to get the attention of their parents or any other family member. Like a common example, my nephew throwing his mother's keys in the toilet just so she could pay attention to him or come to his corner. The id also involves seeking pleasure. It usually operates throughout life, and its demands all fulfillment such as food, sex, safety, and attention. The ego also serves as a balance to the id and the superego. The superego represents culture within us, the norms and values we have internalized from our social group. According to Freud, when the id gets out of hand, most people will follow their desire for pleasure and break society's norms. The superego also provokes feelings of guilt or shame when social rules are usually broken, or pride and self-satisfaction when we follow them.
All right. So, just quickly, just to sort of keep it flow. It's interesting. It seems to me that Freud's superego, the conscience, which our society within us, don't do this, don't do that, all that stuff, seems to me a lot like Mead's me, right? So there's a cross-fertilization there. Okay, young man.
Hi, my name is Antonio. There's different types of views on morality. There are 2 main psychologists with different views. The first view is Kohlberg's theory, and the second view is Gillian's gender differences. Kohlberg's theory, there was a psychologist, Lawrence Kohlberg, who concluded that we go through sequences of stages to develop morality. There are 4 stages of morality. The first stage is called a moral stage, which is about up to the age of 6. For example, as a child, we've all seen children that if they're playing with a toy and you take something away from them, they're going to start screaming or crying, or they're going to say, "Give me back, that's mine," you know? This is the stage where they don't know the difference between right and wrong. This is like Sharfine when she said the id stage, where everything is based upon them. They are trying to satisfy themselves because they don't know the difference. The second stage is a pre-conventional stage, which is between the ages of 7 and 10, where they learn rules, they learn to stay out of trouble, they know the differences between right and wrong. They learn to avoid punishments, you know. They learn all this from like their parents, their teachers, and their friends. The third stage is the conventional stage, which is about the age of 10, where they learn to please those around them and they follow rules and everything that they've been taught. Like, don't touch the stove because you could get burned. So obviously the child's not going to touch the stove because he doesn't want to get burned. And if you break the law, you'll go to jail. So children tend to try to stay on good terms with authority, you know. And the fourth stage is the post-conventional stage. Most people don't reach this stage, though. This is the stage where they reflect upon abstract principles and the differences between right and wrong, and judge people's behavior according to these principles. Like, most of us have seen the movie John Q with Denzel Washington, where John Q's son, he needed a heart transplant, and John Q's insurance wouldn't pay for it. So he took the hospital like hostage and told the doctor to take his heart out of him and transplant it into his son. Most of us would say that would be wrong, but on the other hand, we look at it and he's saving his son's life. So, you know, people would debate whether it's wrong or not. And the second view on the development of morality is Gillian's gender differences. A psychologist, Carol Gillian, was uncomfortable with Kohlberg's decision or conclusion on his studies because Kohlberg studied mostly males, like boys and older guys. This is about the time where more women became social scientists, and they started questioning most of the male researchers because the male researchers only studied the guy's point of view on things, you know. So she studied the differences between the men and the women. And she found out that more women are more emotional and guys are more black and white. More women evaluate morality in terms of personal relationships, and guys think along the lines of abstract principles like right and wrong. Gillian's conclusion, she came to the conclusion that both men and women use personal relationship and abstract principles when they make their moral judgment. But the difference is how they make their moral judgment.
All right. I like the example of John Q with the first one. The second one was good too, so very good. Okay. And Luma?
Yes, my name is Luma, and I'm going to be talking about socialization in emotions. So now everybody is different in the way that they express their emotions, but our emotions all depend on socializations and the certain situations that we're placed into society. So take, for example, social class. See, social class is very important amongst most people and what others think of us. So if you take two upper-class women and two lower-class women and put them in a situation where they haven't met in a long time, they're finally about to meet in the airport, the two lower-class women, they're going to be the more enthusiastic and carefree about expressing their emotions, not caring about what anybody else thinks. But the two upper-class women, they're going to be a little more hesitant to express their emotions because, you know, in the back of their mind, they're thinking that they're upper class, they're going to handle, their emotions, with class. But if you want to take it from a cultural standpoint, if you take two Arab men and two American men, put them in the same situation, haven't seen each other for a long time, traditionally, two Arab men would actually kiss. See, now, if two American men, they would probably shake hands, have a brief hug, but, they're probably not going to kiss because that'd be kind of breaking an unwritten gender rule amongst men. You just don't do that. But sometimes, really, it's not about the act of two men kissing, it's the reaction to the act. That's what makes the act either, important or not. And then if you take relationships, you're going to form a lot of relationships throughout your life. And say you want to say something really important to somebody, and you're not going to take that to your manager. Because your manager is not going to probably want to hear it in the workplace. They're going to want you to keep your personal problems outside of the workplace. So you're probably going to take it to like, a best friend who's going to understand you, and you're going to be able to express your emotions however you want them, because your best friend's going to understand. So really, socialization, it actually helps you keep your emotions in check too, because not the everyday person is, going to go out and wake up and say, hey, I'm going to rob a bank today. And, and without, thinking in the back of their mind about the consequences of probably going to jail. So the bottom line really is that socialization is the key component of, socialization is the key component to how people react emotionally to certain situations in society.
Very good. A good example Henselin uses in the textbook on this particular sociology into the emotions. I mean, you would think emotions would not be learned. But for example, I think we can relate this. If you go to a rock concert, you're going to behave emotionally a lot different than you are in this classroom, right? Even though I know Felix wants to do both. But we're going to... Only kidding. Okay, who's next? We have Seth.
Yeah, my name is Seth, as you said. And I'm going to be talking about gender of socialization into gender. The way we behave and think is a final product of socialization. Since the moment we're born, we're being molded into the being society wants us to be. Through socialization, we also learn about our gender and the appropriate and inappropriate way to behave. According to psychologists such as Sandra Bem, one cognitive process that seems nearly inevitable in human is to divide people into groups. We can partition these groups on the basis of race, age, religion, and so on. However, the most times we split humanity into the basis of gender. For example, when you meet somebody new, the first thing you're going to do is kind of like break the person into a gender group, right? And then that process of kind of like instantly putting somebody in the group is what we call gender socialization. And that thing is really, it's very habitual and automatic. We can't really, it's inevitable for humans to do that. And then society expects different attitudes and behaviors from boys and girls. Gender socialization is a tendency for boys and girls to be socialized differently. Boys are raised to conform to the male gender role, and then girls are raised to conform to the female gender role. Gender socialization begins the moment we're born. From the simple question, what's the boy? Like, they will ask if it's a boy or a girl. That's the first thing anybody's going to ask when a new baby comes out. And then the gender role is, and I'm going to explain gender role now. A gender role is a set of behaviors, attitudes, and personality characteristics expected and encouraged of a person based on his or her sex. Gender roles create gender stereotypes because we have different expectations for female and then for men. And then traditional gender roles help to sustain gender stereotypes, such as that males are supposed to be adventurous, assertive, aggressive, independent, and task-oriented, whereas females are supposed to be sensitive, gentle, dependent, emotional, and then people-oriented. We also learn our gender roles through agencies of socialization, which is the teachers of the society. The main agencies in the Western society are the family, the peer groups, the schools, and then the media. In respect to gender socialization, each of the agencies can reinforce the gender stereotypes. And so right now I'm going to pass on to Phone.
Okay, let's give me a hand. Good, Seth. But the key to remember, these are learned behaviors. So when sociologists study, like, let's say, playground activity with parents, usually it's the mother in the playground with the children. And consistently, they will let the boys be more freer, more latitude, go play on the monkey bars, whatever, than the girls. The girls are held closer to the mother, watch closer. So they learn, stick close to mom. The boys learn, yeah, mom, when it's time for dinner, I'll see you, So these are learned behaviors. It's not that it's something in us. Okay, so Fawn, you're on.
Great. Thanks, Seth. My name is Fawn, and I'm going to go into detail about how we receive these gender messages. Society has given us this gender map to follow, and this map, gives us our culture's guidelines on what's appropriate for our sex. We receive these gender messages from our family and our peers. Our parents are the first ones to show us how to follow these gender roles. When I say the color pink, what comes to your mind?
Girls.
Female.
Okay, got it. You got one. And if I say blue?
Is a boy.
That's right. So the colors pink and blue are associated with gender. So like kids' nurseries, like girls' nurseries would be filled with pink and, pink walls, and boys would be mostly blue. As children grow, parents tend to treat and nurture boys and girls differently. They have different expectations on how girls and boys should act. Girls are expected to be sweet and proper and passive and, independent, and boys to be tough, independent, and active. An example of a boy falls down, you're going to hear, sometimes you're going to hear fathers or parents say to get up and be tough, and you're okay. But if a girl falls down, parents going to run over and give her kisses and say, are you okay? That's just how it is. And just to make her feel better. So kids pick up messages from, kids also pick up on messages from parents and, friends on what toys are acceptable to play with. Children are given different toys depending on their gender. Like boys are given guns and trucks and action figurines, and girls are given, baby dolls and Barbies and kitchen sets. I remember when I was about 6 years old, I really wanted a G.I. Joe, and I kept asking for it, but I would never get one. I never understood why, but that's okay. So
We'll give you one after class.
yeah, I just kept getting more Barbies and strollers. It's okay. So you're wondering, what's the importance of toys in gender socialization? Well, as James Henslin states in his book, almost all parents would be upset if someone gave their son Barbie dolls. Is that correct, right? Okay. So we also receive gender messages from our peers. Once we're in high school, our friends are most influential on how we act, what we look like, what we wear. Everything that we had learned about gender is enforced during these years. In high school, we worry about, our looks, if we fit the image of what's beautiful or what's hot. High school girls care about, their looks, their hair, their makeup, their clothes, and if they're skinny. And boys, they want to have the tough image. They also care about what they look like. They play sports. They work out, to get the girls. So we want to fit in, and we tend to kind of be like our friends. So what we learn tends to stick with us through life. To conclude, I'll use a study done by Burnt and Heller from the Purdue University. They explain that stereotypes are first learned at a young age. At adolescence, they are enforced, and then they become more flexible during college years. And now Seth is going to talk about how we receive gender messages from the media and video games.
Oh, Seth part two. Very good, Fawn.
Okay, now I'm going to talk about the mass media. The mass media reinforces behaviors and attitudes towards the appropriate expressions of gender roles. In the article, Pressure to Modernize, Helena Norberg-Hodge found that because of the increasing influence of Western culture and glamorized violence in films and movies, young men in Ladakh have begun to put themselves in much more gender-specific roles. The depiction of how real men are supposed to behave has led to a shift in their once sentimental and easygoing culture. Previously, men were not to be ashamed to show their emotions, But now, the men are becoming more distant and angrier and then less secure. Like in Ladakh, back in the days, men were easy, they were not afraid to show their emotions to the younger men and then to the older women. Like when they see an older woman, they'll just rush in. If she has any load on her, they'll help her take it home. But now, because of the violence and everything in the movie industry now, they don't do that no more. Now they go more distant. When they see something like that, they'll just run away from it, and then they become more angry. They don't even help the old woman or something like that. And then
It's powerful. That's very powerful.
In an American culture, men are often depicted as obsessed with sex and prone to violence. In a study by Melissa Milkey, she found that junior high boys talk most frequently about sex and violence because of their views that are expressed on television programs and movies. Women are frequently depicted in the media in subordinate roles, stereotypically being more emotional, docile, submissive, and often viewed as sex symbols. And then many teenagers now struggle with poor self-images and then eating disorders due to the pressures to conform to unattainable standards in our culture. Nowadays, even if they're gonna put a woman in the movie, like to be kind of like a dominant role, now they make the woman, they give the woman like male traits to kind of like emphasize the female power, and all of this is wrong because of the mass media. So right now I'm gonna pass on to Felix to give us.
Okay, very good.
Hi class, my name is Felix, and I'm about to talk about women becoming men, and it's all about gender sworn virgins. Sworn virgins. It's a story that happened in Albania in prior to 1985. It just talks about an 11-year-old girl that had to take on the responsibility of the father as a man, and the story goes something like this. She exclaimed, "I will do it." And then the sister was like, "What will you do?" She was like, "I'm going to be a man. I vow to be a man from this day forward." She took off her clothes, cut her hair, put on the clothes of the father, and then vowed to be a man. And the next question was, what are you going to do next? She had to go over to the village elders to swear an oath of becoming a man. And this was a condition that you get if you swear an oath of being a virgin. That's a lifetime condition that you have to go through. These are the conditions that if you swear an oath of being a man, you cannot have sex, you cannot bear children. Those were the conditions that were given to you if you swear an oath, and then the penalty that you have to pay if you go against this law is death. So once you swear an oath of being a man and you go behind closed doors and you have sex with anybody, or you bear children, or you do anything, they're going to kill you. You're going to pay a price for that. And then these are what you can do if you at least become a man. That's if you become a sworn virgin. These are the privileges that is accorded you as a man that you don't usually get as a woman during that day. That is, you can wear men clothes. You can move freely through the society without being questioned. You can sit among men during wedding. You can own your own property, and you can approve and disapprove of marriages in your family. And basically, this is what the story is about, that based on a circumstance in a particular situation, one's gender can change from being a man to a woman. So basically, this is what the story is talking about.
Yeah. Okay, one second. Let me just say, in Albania prior to 1985, they had a dictator. It was a traditional society where the women weren't allowed to go out and work or even go to the market unless they were accompanied by somebody, even to go to mosque. So when the father died, in the past, the family died because they couldn't go out to work. They had to depend upon whatever charity they got. So this is a way she didn't change her sex physically. Yeah. She didn't go through like an operation. She just took on the social role of the male, and that allows the family, see the logic behind it allows the family to survive. Because she can go out and work, but she gives up sex for her life, yes. Okay, very good. That was a good example. Thank you, Felix. Who's next? Daniel.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Daniel. I'm an engineer student at Montgomery College, Germantown. I'll be discussing about the studies on two sociologists, Melvin Cohn and Annette Laurent. Mr. Cohn did a study on blue-collar, working class, and middle class, and how the parents socialize and rear their children. Most families use a mix of both characteristics, and each exhibit their own patterns. First, I'll be talking about the working class. Working class parents are accustomed to taking orders, at work. They stress command and obedience. basically they're raising their kids to enter the workforce, to keep a job, don't get fired, you know. They want their children to follow the rule and stay out of trouble. Stay out of trouble. For discipline, they use physical punishment. On the other hand, the middle class stresses interactive communication, creativity, and they value autonomy. They want the kids to be independent. They look to develop their curiosity, self-expression, and self-control. Rather physical punishment, they use reasoning. These life experience tend to benefit the middle class children because you know, when they grow up and when they enter the workplace, when they enter the middle class workplace, white collar workplace, I'm sorry. Well, why is there a difference in the class patterns? Well, it was due to the parents' life experiences and in their workplace. Blue collars are usually being told what to do, what to dress. They expect their children to behave like themselves. You know. In contrast, middle class parents taught their children to take more initiative, and they mainly socialize their children. You know, the qualities that they chose. They find valuable. In some instances, the working class acts like middle class, and vice versa due to the parent type of job. Blue collar that works at home more, like myself, I work 10 minutes from my home, and I do work at home, so occasionally I do act like I'm middle class, but not on purpose, because I spend more time, quality time with my children, and that's one of my enjoyment. Middle class, such as office workers, acts like blue class because their job emphasizes conformity. Basically, they want to blend in with the groups. They don't want to stand out. You know, if they're smart, you know, they know it's the wrong decision, but they don't want to like. They want to follow the group, so stay in conformity. There's another sociologist, Annette Leroux, performed a field research on 88 children and parents. So what she observes, the children's development is determined by the parents' influences according to their social class. She coined the term wildflower to children of working class and tender houseplants to middle class.
Very good.
Wildflower children will develop naturally, spontaneously, versus the tender house, you know, with nurture and with the correct parent guidance. The working class parents set limits. They within boundaries. They allow the children to grow. Children often do not play organized activity, but play outside with their relatives and watch TV most of the time. In contrast, the middle class parent let their children, you know, join organized activity to enhance teamwork and interaction. Parents organize around activity to develop knowledge and social skills. And the last two agents I'll discuss very quickly is the type of neighborhood. If the children from poor neighborhood is more likely to get in trouble, get pregnant, and get in trouble with the law, and when they grow up, they develop mental health problem. Affluent neighborhood have fewer family in transition. What it means is the family and the children, they usually live there since their childhood. They nurture and closely watch their children. In retrospect, the neighborhood becomes a really big family. Everyone knows everyone. You know Bob and Charles all the way down the street. The children are more, this way, the children are more protected and they're safe, and they stay out of trouble. Not last but least, the third agent of socialization is the influence of religion. It's important because it provides a formal structure for people. People attend religious service to learn value and morality. People have a feeling of belongings and have a sense of self-identity. People join church houses or synagogue for various reasons. My parent joined, we were sponsored by a Christian church, and from my childhood, what they learn is they learn English class, they attend English course, and they receive job contacts. So it was beneficial to them, so influenced them in a great way. And that's it.
All right. Well, it's nice that you have direct experience with this, being both a parent and then being a son and having your parents learn English at a church. Very interesting. Okay, you're on.
All right, hello. My name is Markeem Lawson, and today I'm going to discuss how our schools, peer groups, and our workplaces influences our orientations towards life. First, as we all know, our schools is what's used to broaden our skills and knowledge. On the other hand, most people do not know that schools are broken up into two functions. First, we have our manifest function, and in there, these are the intended consequences of our school environment, our school learning system. And there, teachers normally use what is known as the hidden curriculum, where they relate everyday, real life situations to the subject. For example, how you talked about the crisis that we're having with the bills being passed.
The debt limit increase.
Yeah, for that. And then moving on, we have what is known as our latent functions, where we learn from one another as students. These are the unintended consequences of our learning environment. For example, if you take a young child and you put them in school, most likely they're going to learn insulting words or curse words, such as your son when you say he came home from school and dropped the F-bomb.
He did.
Moving
we said
on.
the full word in rehearsal, just so you know. I'm not going to say it here. We recognize the cameras, the influence. Capisce?
Moving on, we have our peer groups. This often this build our socialization with one another, but it decreases our family influences. Take, for example, if you take a child, your son, once again, if you put him in school with other children, he's going to do whatever his friends do, but as far as once he get home, it's going to go down because he want to do what his friends do. First, you can take a child riding a bike. The parents first thought they want their child to be safe. They want to wear the helmet, shoulder pads, knee pads. The child's not going to want to do that because his friends don't think that's cool. Then last, we have our workplaces, which normally comes part of our self-description. We use the X a school teacher, to describe themselves. Most likely they would say hardworking, loyal, and relate their job towards their self-description. And that brings along the term anticipatory socialization, where one learns from experiences. And
all right.
that sounds good.
Very good.
Hi, my name is Crystal.
Crystal, hello.
I'm going to talk about resocialization. So basically,
Resocialization, is that what
yeah.
you said?
So the definition is undergoing the process of learning new norms, new values, new attitudes, and new behaviors in order to match a different situation in life that you're going through. Basically, we're constantly going through different types of resocializations, and it's how we grow. There's different intensities. There's lesser intense resocializations, like a child in grade school going from 3rd grade to 4th grade. It's they're still changing their surroundings, but it's not there's no emotional stress or anything. It's not that drastic. More intense changes would be somebody joining or maybe going from high school to college, somebody joining a monastery, and then we get into the term total institution, which was coined by Irving Goffman. Total institution is basically a place that's cut off from society, boot camp, prison, something like that. So basically, it's a unit that has control over your life, and it's more about the group, it's not about the individual. Then there's actually, when you join a total institution, there's something called a degradation ceremony, which this term was coined by Harold Garfinkel. And basically, it's the stripping away of the personal identity kit, which is all the things we use to express ourselves, tattoos, piercings, hats, the way we dress, our jewelry, anything that makes us who we are and let us express ourselves, they'll take that away from you when you join a total institution, and that's about it.
It's very good. It's very good. We're going to go here now. Here, I'll take it. The total institutions, both Daniel and I have experienced the military, so we know what it's like to join a total institution right here. They do strip away your identity, and it's really weird. Like in boot camp, you made me think for some reason of it. I hadn't thought of this in years. When they shave your head, like do you think you know everybody that you're with? You know, when you first come into the military and boot camp, and your first few days, you still have your hair. So you say, oh, hi, you say everybody, and all of a sudden everybody gets a haircut. Who are you? You don't even recognize, they have to reintroduce themselves. Okay, so here we go.
All right.
Last but not least, socialization through the life course, right? Socialization through the life course? Okay.
So my name is Raisa, and I'll be talking, our group will be talking about socialization through life, and I'll be discussing the childhood and adolescence. So the childhood is from birth to about age 12. Childhood is about a time where the child is basically clueless about certain things. He's still learning how to walk and talk. Therefore, he's depending on his parents to make choices for them. So basically, like, for example, the parents will choose the activity in which he wants his child to be in, and they will basically choose the type of clothing they want their children to wear. For example, historian Philip Harris in 1965, he basically noticed that in Europeans' portrait, children were basically dressed in adults' clothing, doing some adult activities, and they basically had no facial expression. They weren't smiling or anything like that. So basically, during medieval time, there wasn't like a childhood, basically, because the children were basically seen as a miniature adult. So at age 7, like, the boys will basically go out and work. They will leave home and work. They will learn to cut jewels and stones. And the girls will basically stay home and until they get married, basically. So they will help around the house, cook and clean. So during that time, the child hearing was different because the parents would basically terrorize the child by keeping them in line. They would lock them in dark closets, read them scary stories, bedtime stories, and they would take them to witness like some gruesome events. So I have a quote here from DeMose in 1975. So he basically says that a common moral lesson involved taking children to visit gibbet, an upraised post on which executed bodies were left hanging, where they were forced to inspect the rotting corpse, as an example of what happened to bad children when they grow up. The whole class were taken out of school to witness hanging, and parents will often whip their child afterwards to make them remember what they have seen. So after...
Excuse me 1 second.
Yeah, sure.
That's pretty intense. So what I heard her say, did you hear what she said? They took children out to witness hangings, the execution of people, and then they whipped them afterwards to remember what they watched.
So afterwards...
I don't want to go back. I'm very comfortable with this century.
In the industrialization, when children started going to school, basically, and stopped taking adults' roles, the parents then realized that they needed to be more tender, and they saw that the children were basically innocent and they needed more care and protection. Okay, now I'm going to talk about the adolescents, which is ages 13 to 17. So adolescent is a social invention, not a natural age division. Basically, in the earlier centuries, people moved from like being a child to a young adult. So there was like no stopover between. The child is basic adolescent is basically a child having an adult body because, at age 14, you start hitting puberty, you start having boobs and all that. So you're kind of confused. You're confused, basically. No, you didn't hear. That's okay. So you're kind of confused. You're not really sure if you should be acting like an adult or a child. So you're kind of confused. So, and basically, the industrial revolution allowed adolescence to be invented. It was the first time in history where teens did not have to go to the labor forces to work, and education then became more important for achieving success. In tribal society, they will hold like initiation nights, which is basically adolescents grounded, like they're grounded for their self-identity and know how they fit in society. Like it's basically like the sweet 16, like when you turn 16, they throw a big party for your cake and all that to basically show that you have become a woman or a man. So in industrialized world, adolescents must find themselves dealing with being neither a child or an adult. So they're trying to find their identity and distinguish themselves from young to the old world. Adolescents develop their own subculture with distinctive clothing, hairstyle, language, gestures, and music. So basically, with all those, they try to find their common ground, like where they stand. So now I'm gonna pass it on to Felicia. She's gonna talk about young adult and middle years.
Very good, very good.
Okay, so I'm going to talk about transitional adulthood, and basically it's a transition period where young adults graduate from high school and go off to college to pursue a major of their interest. And most likely they will live in a dorm or an apartment with a roommate, and they have to look to their parents most likely for financial support. And also, after graduation from college is when the young adults go back home, and they try to live cheaply and try to establish a career. But they don't necessarily have an identity of who they are just yet. But after a certain period of time, young adults take on a full-time job. They get married. They, of course, get serious about a career, and they have children. Unfortunately, they potentially go into debt for life's expenses. And after time progresses, they go through a stage for middle years, which is generally the ages of between 30 and 65, which is when they are more sure of themselves and they have an identity. They have a secure job, stable income, and household. And this is also when women try to take on a lot of demands. They have full-time jobs, they have children they have to care for, and it can definitely sort of wreak havoc in a relationship or in a household. Or it can be vice versa, where men take care of the children and try to work full-time jobs. So it's also common for people to get a divorce, unfortunately, and where they may lose their job. And it can, again, it can cause a sort of strain in relationships of people around them and or within the household. But in the later middle years, health issues may arise, where basically people's bodies start to change. And that's when the older generation looks to the younger generation for care. But sometimes the older generation doesn't even need care from the younger generation. They may still, they may not retire. They may work part-time. They may volunteer somewhere. Or if they do retire, they may buy themselves newer cars, bigger houses, but they have, job security. And they take exotic vacations just to enjoy their lives and enjoy what they have saved up for so long from working over a period of time. For example, I know a woman that she's 80 or 90 years old, and she still works, and I don't ever see her retiring. She has a sort of a farm life where she has goats and cows and chickens that she cares for, and she sees no reason to retire. She wants to be productive with her life. She doesn't want to be unemployed and, sitting all day and watching TV. That's a little boring. But, I admire her. She's still productive, even though she's older. But now I'm going to pass it to T so we can discuss the older.
1 second, though, before we go, just 1 sec. you know, when you say she's old, she's old. I said, well, you know, the alternative's not so good, right? So she's still around. But, you know, it's true, right? But the idea, what they found a lot of studies, when people retire. In other words, they go, I'm retired. And they go, that's it. They start drinking and hanging. They die quicker. So that's why she's living longer, because she's doing what she loves. So what's wrong with that? I'm going to be here forever. I'm not leaving. Mr. T.
Yeah, my name is Tochugo. I'm here to talk about the older years, which is age 65 and on. Basically, the transitional older years, and back in the days in agricultural societies, to be old, you were considered 40, but now, thanks to industrial revolutions such as better medicine, better health care, like, the older years has been extended to age 65 and on. So basically, people who are in good health today are coming to experience their 60s, not as old age, but as an extension of their middle years, which is basically at some people at age 65, they tend to find second careers instead of moving to Florida and just playing golf all day. They tend to, like, that would be lovely to do.
It's true.
That's a lovely life, but some people that I know, like, they personally would like to work. And this stage is so recent that a new stage of life seems to be evolving in this period between retirement, which averages age 63 and on. And during this stage, as research shows, the improved health rate has gone up, and as research shows, like 2/3 of men between the age of 60s and 75 continue to have sex, and it's been found out that they tend to enjoy it even more at this stage. Like, they appreciate it and they tend to enjoy it more. And now when
let him finish. Is a sauce, okay? Keep going. It's better when you get older, trust me.
The next stage I'm talking about is sociological significance of life course, which is basically social factors influence our life course. When you live makes a difference in the course of your life. For example, if you were born during a booming economy, you tend to have a better chance of having a job. Whereas if you was born during a depression, the likelihood of you having a job is, bar none, like, very low. And also your social location tends to play a huge role in your life course. For example, if you grow up in a neighborhood in Bethesda, Potomac, you tend to go to a better school, like what you have better resources, basically. As in, if you grew up in the hood or a bad neighborhood, you tend to go to a bad school, or not usually a bad school, but like less resources are provided for you. And basically that's about it. It's the older years and 65 and on.
Okay. Very good, very good. Okay, so to conclude, you know, you would think that all this stuff about socialization, you know, socialization goes in, the behavior comes out, you know. So are we prisoners of socialization? Becomes the next question. And the answer is yes and no. Most of the time we conform, right? We do whatever. But there are times, because of our creative part of self, I think, which Kiana pointed out and others have pointed out about the I and maybe the ego, that we're going to take all our experiences, and even though we have similar experiences, each of us are individuals, because your experience is different than my experiences, right? We don't have the same experiences. So you're going to take these, and then you're going to create something. You're going to do something. You're going to become an engineer. You're going to become a doctor. You're going to be creative. You're going to experience what Daniel was talking about before, where you're going to decide what to do, because that occupation that you're in lends itself to that. Like a doctor, a lawyer, an engineer, you have to be creative. So that's the benefits of college. And clearly, this technique of Comedia Dell'Arte, I'm just curious, what'd you think? Did you like this idea of it's more cooperative and group? The students really got into it. So we want to thank Montgomery College TV. And that's it. Have a great day.